web fiction for Crimson Vow is complete, and with it, our re-return to Innistrad. Not only does this narrative give us an insight into the machinations of its betrothed antagonists and desperate heroes, it also gives us the second half of a 10-story arc given to just one author, something of a rarity in this current narrative format. So, how was the wedding, and can Innistrad ever be a place of hope? Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we talk about all things magic flavour design and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mam.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
And today we are going to jump straight into the Crimson Vow Innistrad online story. I think last time we spoke, which was 2 weeks ago, we had plans to do quite a few different episodes on Innistrad about this, that, and the other. And honestly, I think just the fatigue of products and the fatigue of life in general has just made it so that I think we might keep our opinions about the showcase frames to ourselves, at least on the podcast anyway. We don't need to do a whole episode on it because there's more interesting stuff to talk about, i.e. the Crimson Vow story, which is like the whole narrative of like why we're doing this whole thing. We might swing back around to showcases in a larger context. And also, look, hey, the mechanics of Innistrad, some are flavorful, some are not. There you go.
Bug counters, not as good as food.
Not as good as food.
And food isn't as good as treasures. And treasures aren't as good as clues. There we go, done, sorted.
What was the one which you took out the words in the squared brackets?
Oh, fucking cleave. Oh, come on. See, this is a good thing. We don't want to talk about it because it'll just be us bitching and moaning about vernacular and things like that.
Well, no, there we go.
That's what we needed. Square brackets. That's exactly what we needed.
We've compacted an hour's episode into 40 seconds. Squared brackets, question mark. Okay.
Yeah, our opinions have been cleaved from the card. There we go. Beautiful.
Yeah, there we
Fantastic.
go. Done. What a joke. Anyway, we're going to jump into the story, because the story is not a joke. So, last time we had a look at the MTG story, it was obviously for Midnight Hunt, and they have the wonderful Arsenault Rivera doing all of the main stories for both Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow, which is not like unusual that they're getting one author to pen all of the main stories, but it is unusual because it's not just like the 5 that we've come to be used to in these like in the new sort of structure of online. Because Crimson Vow and Midnight Hunt are kind of double featuring, they've done both of them, and we'll actually tell like a 10-episode story arc. What? I actually get room to breathe and tell 2 halves of a whole story. And you know what? It's really benefited from it, I think.
Yeah. If you need to have a what's the word I'm looking for? A
continual.
Yeah, no, I can't remember what the word was. I was lost. It's early here. Sorry, guys. Coherent. Yeah, if you want a coherent story across that many individual stories, across that many characters, across an entire plane, get one writer to do all of it. Like, have some faith in them and let them go a little bit wild. And I think this is the perfect example of you get 5 episodes to build everything up, and then you get 5 episodes to kind of give some conclusion and give some. Yeah, you're not bouncing around different various people. It's like the Ixalan story, right? Harker is one of the best story arcs, all given to one person, kind of able to crack on and kind of do and build their own characters and give them their own arcs and their own completion without everyone having to feel like they need to do them justice individually and they're all confused with the tone and all that nonsense. No, fantastic.
Yeah, again, another 2-set block which had 10 online stories each, but obviously before that structure was kind of formalized. That was some of those. And I know that the Midnight Hunt stories, as much as we liked them, they weren't maybe like the most like expansive of every story arc there's ever been, but actually there was a lot of good in that. I think when we were talking about it, I liked the fact, or at least I liked the fact that it was kind of more down to earth. One of the like narrative structure issues we struggled with, and I know you struggled with especially, was the fact that I think Arsenault Rivera was trying to bounce around like Arlen's memories and the present day, and then back to wolf brain and back to human brain. And as much as it was all good stuff, there was maybe just a lot of different voices for maybe actually even not that many characters bouncing around, which was maybe if there was to be any sort of like, okay about it, it was that there wasn't maybe one voice for Arlen. But I actually think that now that we have the Crimson Vow stories, and there is a lot less of that. And in fact, it's almost gone, we'll talk about it, it's almost gone the other way with certain characters where there is one sort of pulsing voice for everything they're doing. I actually think that that's quite nice, and it allows all the stuff that we had in the previous stories to come back and inform, especially Arlen themselves directly, but also the other sort of issues going on. Like it was kind of hard to maybe judge it on the sort of breathe in, exhale of a story when we didn't have the exhale yet. And now that we have that second half, I actually look back on the Midnight Hunt stories with like, oh, they absolutely did know what they were doing. Oh, okay, we'll shut up then. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the key point for this is that there's two focuses, right? In the first 5 episodes, it was Arlen, and there was obviously a backdrop of other characters. In these 5, it's Sorin, and there's a backdrop of other characters. And whether or not Rivera prefers Sorin, or has more investment in Sorin, or has done more research into Sorin, or wanted to voice Sorin more, it seems like there's a slight different cadence in the way that they kind of talk from Sorin's point of view that feels a little more focused. I feel like Arlen's almost like, it was almost like they were making up almost like retconning, re-establishing the canon of the past, almost like giving you like remember all of this thing that happened. There's none of that really with Sorin. There's no like, remember any of this. It kind of just presents it and goes, this is his past, instead of kind of going like bouncing between a past and a present, even though there is within one of the stories a specific part where it bounces between the past and the present. It kind of works. It seems to work better. It's almost like they learn as they go along, kind of how to make this kind of work and this structure kind of fit into the story without feeling, disjointed and alienating, which I feel like with Arlen it kind of did a little sometimes. Even though now I look back at it, I think the focus was fine. I think that Sorin's past is a little bit more like nebulous and a little less obvious. But and maybe a bit more nuanced. I just feel like the voice came across a little clearer, and I think also Sorin needed to have a good voice, and I feel like this is a really good example of that they did him justice. And everyone's like, yes, we can fanboy over Sorin again. He's not a moody douchebag
I'm
anymore.
so glad you think that. Okay, right, we'll get into that. Right, first, let's just do the big story breakdown. So obviously when we do our book club episodes and we're literally going to talk about one article, this goes by like that. But this might be a good 5-minute chunk of me talking as I go through the story breakdown. I'm obviously missing out a lot of the nuance of the story in this breakdown, but if you haven't read the Crimson Baron stories, as we always say, why are you here? But if you want a refresher, or if you know what, you just don't want to read them and you'd rather I give you the breakdown, then fine. Like, I'm not your dad.
Thanks.
So yeah. Cool. All right, let's jump into it. So Episode 1 opens with a description of how vampires sleep in jest of the humans. So vampires don't need sleep, but we get a really nice introduction to how vampire society looks on the world around them, because they sleep almost in spite and in jest of the humans, which is a nice little setup for what's to come in terms of their whole aesthetic. We then cut to a boy, Grigori, collecting blood from his mother into an enchanted bowl. It seems like Olivia Valdurin has tasked the humans of Stensia with donating blood every day until the quote-unquote festivities. We're still not quite sure what the festivities are yet in the narrative world. Obviously, the entire setup of the set is a vampire wedding. But, let's just pretend we don't know that.
Fuck off, no.
We then cut to Adeline, Arlen, and the Gatewatch, which in this iteration is Teferi, Kaya, and Chandra, and they are seen fighting back against a vampire cohort. They've been mounting counter-offensives with the humans of the Harvesttide Festival in response to Olivia's stealing of the Moonsilver Key at the climax of the Midnight Hunt storyline. Knowing that the Endless Night will claim the whole plane of Innistrad, Arlen suggests revisiting Sorin Markov for help, as he was also once concerned with the plane's survival, and he also harbours a deep hatred for Olivia. We then cut to Sorin brooding around Markov Manor, as he usually does, and we see in his mind's eyes flashbacks of his debates with his grandfather, Edgar Markov, about the survival of the plane of Innistrad and the controlling of the vampire race. So, quick little history lesson. Edgar Markov was the one who was the progenitor of the vampires in Innistrad, done through a blood ritual, including the blood of an angel, and he turned the humans, or at least the kind of elite humans of the plane of Innistrad, into vampires to protect them against famine. But obviously this has created more problems, i.e. the vampires overfeeding, and this meant that throughout the millennia, Sorin Markov has had debates with Edgar Markov about going, cool, we stopped the human famine, what about the vampire famine that's soon to come? And they've had back and forth about this for millennia, it seems. When he goes to wake Edgar from his coffin in Markov Manor, he sees that Edgar's coffin has gone completely, and in its place, an invitation from Olivia to the Valdaran Markov wedding. At this point, Soren also finds the Gatewatch crew in his manor, and they start to form a plan of action. We then cut to two vampires, Relio and Cordelia, who are arriving at the wedding venue. They are discussing the rivalries between the different vampire houses, and we also see different vampire families that we've not really met before, i.e. the Domnathi and the Nusfar. And there is plenty of vampire dueling and murder, including the murder of Relio by Henrika Domnathi, who he's been slagging off the entire time. We also get a card for Henrika, and I think Henrika shows up in another side story as well, quite a pivotal one.
Yeah, there's a Thalia one, I believe.
Yes, the Thalia Odric one, yeah. Setting Enrica up to be quite a character, I think, for future sets. Olivia finally arrives at the ceremony and dresses the guests, revealing to them Edgar's coffin. We then join the Gatewatch and Soren trying to get through the front entrance of the wedding without using violence. They want to just try and crash the wedding without actually kicking up a fuss, but they can't get through. Only Soren can, because he actually has like an invite, and the Gatewatch decide that it's too risky to fight. They wait outside. Soren walks through Olivia's castle, drawing attention from the other vampires as he goes. He arrives at the main hall and is greeted by Olivia. Olivia then wakes Edgar using a blood ritual from his coffin with her own blood, which in the same move enthralls him to her, and the wedding begins. We are now then shown the crux of Olivia's plan, not only to obtain power through the marriage of the two houses, but also to control the angels of Innistrad by drinking the blood of a now captured Sigarda, using the Moon Silver Key as like a magical vessel. So she wants to, using blood magic, bind her own essence to the angels, making the angels enthralled to her, much in the same way that she's just done to Edgar. And also much in the same way that the anointed blood ritual that Edgar used to create vampires was performed as well. The wedding vows are spoken, and Soren is able to break free of his bindings and attack Olivia. But whilst he doesn't wound her, he does manage to knock the Moon Silver Key from her grasp, and from it springs forth the spirit of Catilda, the witch leader of the Dawnheart Coven. With Soren's help distracting Olivia, Catilda is able to free Sigarda from her bonds, and Sigarda in turn causes an outburst of holy energy and light that destroys not only the interior of the Voldaren Manor, but kills many of the vampires as well. The Gatewatch, who has been sat outside the entire time, are now finally able to get in because the castle's magical wards have been disabled. We then show that the Gatewatch and the Cathars and the villagers storm the castle, cue the fight sequence, the big battle scene that we are all accustomed to in these stories. Guests also join in the fray against the vampires. Sorry, not guests. Typo. Geists. Geists show up. Ghosts. They also join the fray against the vampires. Guests and Geists. What a world. Soren confronts Edgar, and after being somewhat beaten, is thrown down into what we think is just a pit. Arlen goes after Olivia and finds herself unable to gain the upper hand in her human form, eventually succumbing to her wolf side. And that's at the climax of episode 4. Episode 5 brings up on Soren finding the hole to be a well of blood, and he uses this time to muse on his existence. He does decide to fight back against Edgar, allowing himself to drink the blood that surrounds him, and he finally bests Edgar in a duel, but lets him live rather than kill him. As the battle rages on in the manor, vampires show no signs of relenting, that is until Tovalar and his Howl Pack, along with Arlen's wolves, who make a return, show up and turn the tide against the vampires. Tovalar finds Arlen, and together they corner Olivia and Edgar, who give up the Moon Silver Key and escape. Arlen vows to still challenge Tovalar over his actions with the Harvest Tide, however they leave on unviolent terms, and with the key in hand, the vampires push back, the gang head to the Celestis to activate it, bringing back the day and night cycle to Innistrad. As the planeswalkers depart, Teferi turns to Arlen and warns of the threat of Phyrexia, but it also shows a glimmer of hope as he believes that the Moon Silver Key, given to him by Catilda, could help defeat them. And that is where we leave off. Quite a lot goes on in the first couple of episodes, and then the last 2 or 3 just kind of have the big battle scenes and the kind of wrapping up of loose ends, I feel. I mean, I really liked this story. I think I preferred this over the Midnight Hunt stories, weirdly, and I'm not that fussed about vampires. You?
Yeah, I feel like, again, as I said earlier, I feel it's almost the exact same structure, right? Without the weird side fetch quest thing, which the first the Midnight Hunt kind of arc had, when they went to go and find where the Moon Silver Key is. Apart from that kind of drive-by of Innistrad, this is much more focused, much more contained, which, as much as I said that was a bad thing from a set design point of view, from a story point of view, that's actually like a significant advantage. Like everything that the first Midnight Hunt story was doing, this kind of story does as well, where it has, as you say, a lot going on in the beginning. It was like this outwards perspective, then a focus on the cast and what they're doing, and then two episodes of fighting, you know? but yeah, and I really enjoyed it. I found it really engaging. I'm just going to say, I want Rivera to do quite a lot more fight scenes in future because it's one of the few times that I don't get bored and
Mm.
yawny over. I mean, there was a slight aspect of Gideon Waves to Surreal kind of thing of where it's always Ferry slowing someone down, and it's always
Yeah,
Chandra using fire.
yeah.
Like fine, cool, but the actual fights that we see focus, and we see a lot of a
Mm.
focus fight between Arlen and Olivia, and a focus fight between Edgar and Soren, and this goes on for like pages,
Yep.
paragraphs and paragraphs, interspersed with internal monologues and power struggles and the power dynamic kind of shifting, and it's really engaging without just being like. And he swung a sword again. I mean, he didn't even swing a sword. I mean, we're going to get to that bit because I cannot believe the weapon that Soren chooses.
The weapon
But
that
yeah,
everyone chooses. There's a line in episode 4 which is Sorin to Edgar, and he says, "Is this what the Markov line has come to? A deluded old man swinging furniture at his grandson."
right. He
It's a
gets
really good
chairs.
line.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
fantastic.
there's a
Yeah,
yeah.
that
I know what you mean. Sorry, there's another quote as well from episode 5. It's funny that you mentioned about the fight scenes because I also yawn at fight scenes usually, but you're right. And actually, two quotes I pulled from episode 4 and 5. One is that the episode 4 is that furniture line, and then in episode 5, one of the descriptors for the larger battle scene is two mounted Cathars are joined by a youth riding a trained pig. All three of them take on a falcon raft flushed with blood. There's a demon swinging a column at a group of farmers, and Sagada is there to catch it. A guard cuts the head clean from a warrior's shoulders, tossing it to a blood-mouthed child who catches it from the air like a well-trained dog. What the fuck is going? What? It's like a Where's
yeah, right.
Waldo? Like,
It's so good. It's like, where was the demon come from? Where did the
yeah, I
fucking
know. Yeah.
demon come from? There was no mention of a demon before. He's just only swinging a pillar about.
Well,
I
I
feel
think
like,
the Dom Nathi vampires are demon worshippers, aren't they?
yeah,
And
so maybe
actually,
they
do you
can
know
just
what?
summon them like out of nowhere,
Yeah.
like come
Also,
hither. Yeah.
anyway, but yeah, so the descriptors that as you said, it's not boring fight scenes by any stretch.
Mm.
They're quite full on, and it just Rivera seems to blend this line. It's almost like it's Jesper Ising writing it, but as he paints. Right, there's some quite grim imagery and some quite horrible like implications going on, but the amount of whimsy and kind of sort of effortless like just joy in what's going on kind of permeates through. Right.
Yeah, I mean, Innistrad's not a nice place. A lot of these people have really like terrible pasts and presents and probably futures. There's really like bleak kind of representations of both Arlen and like Soren's position and mental like circumstance. Like both of them are going through like a massive amount of turmoil, and yet it's still quite fun and frisky. And dare I say it, a lot of that might come to do with a little backdrop of Gatewatch that sits there, so it doesn't become really sullen and really
Yeah.
like it doesn't it's almost like tempered, right? It's tempered moodiness of where you kind of go, oh, and then there's also this smirk whenever I think that all of the shit's going on inside the manor, and then all of the Gatewatch is waiting outside tapping on the wards going, can we come in, yet? We just, is it time? Please. I don't know, I find the whole setup to be quite amusing, and I think they pulled off the grandness of the Valdarin Manor and the grandness of the party and the idea of there's this massive culmination of vampires, and it did feel like surely they're not going to surely the vampires can't put up that much of a fight, and it took a concerted effort, like a considerable amount of effort, almost a ridiculous amount of effort, just to kind of break parity.
Mm.
Which I guess, yeah, is a good. I mean, you'd expect that, right? When you see all of the card images of the guards and things like that, wearing this giant ornate armor with these great maces and stuff like that, and you've just got Sorin who just swaths his way into the middle of it, expecting to come out unharmed and get
Yeah,
into his
wearing his
way.
like
Like,
jacket draped across his shoulders.
yeah, like, and for the most part, kind of nearly pulls it off. So yeah,
Yeah, he does
fantastic.
a lot of work. Well, do you know what? So let's talk about Soren, right? Because Soren, I mean, the last two stories also do pivot to Arlen and a bit of Teferi and Catilda as well. Chandra's also there.
When is she not?
Well, like, do you know what? I'm not going to get too deep into this because it will ruin my brand. I didn't hate Chandra in these stories. She was fucking useless, and I don't know why she was there if Midnight Hunt was its own thing. But Crimson Vow, she's there. She's doing a flame thing. She's she's fighting with Adeline, who's badass, and then they have like a bit of a love story going on. Like, fine, they're doing their thing. But yeah, for the most part, Crimson Vow. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold as well, if anyone hasn't noticed. Crimson Vow follows Sorin. And your right, what you said at the top of the episode. For so long, Soren's been this kind of meme lord of being like, "Oh, I'm edgy and cool," and and if anyone's going to hate any character, people are going to hate on Soren. Much in the same way that I will hate on Nahiri. People will hate on Soren with equal further. Um,
Mm.
I really enjoyed his voice in this. I didn't feel like I was embarrassed to be like, do you know what? Soren's a really well-rounded, interesting character who, yes, he's a little bit moody and a little bit broody, but this is far more empathetic and sympathetic in the writing for him than I think we've seen in quite some time. And he just doesn't seem all powerful all the time. I think that's the problem with Soren. Because he's like a millennia-old vampire and he's like an old walker, and he's still pretty much, because he's a vampire, retains most of the powers he probably would have done as an old walker anyway. Like, he kind of gives that Superman thing of going, well, why is he being broody? He's literally all powerful. What the fuck's his problem? But here we see him like not all powerful, like the politics and the emotional ties that his vampire family hold on him, even the ones he despises, really puts him in his place, and he has to fight both physically and emotionally for what he has to gain. And I really loved that. I thought that was a great pivot for him.
Yeah, he's got like the way I put it is like it kind of dropped his mood. It kind of pulled his lofty moodiness down. Right, it kind of gave him some humility. Like he's
Yeah.
genuinely a guy that's lost like everything. Like it gives you some massive perspective. Like this is why he's broody and absent and doesn't really seem to give a shit. It's because he's been living for thousands of years, completely shunned and pariahed from his ancestors, from all his family, who he sees one by one, also resurrected back from their slumber, back into the party, all to sneer and jeer at him. While basically,
Mm.
it seems like everything he's had, everything he's strived for, is just mocked in front of him. Like even Edgar, for all of our like, there was maybe a potential, maybe he knows what's going on, maybe the glamour didn't really work, maybe he's got his own machinations. Nah, guy's a tool. Guy's a fucking tool. He's an old senile tool, and it's like
Mm.
it was the last person that Sorin had to kind of like have any faith or any kind of like connection with, and he has to go at him with a fucking metal pipe.
Yeah.
As much as that might be really cathartic, you can tell throughout the entirety of the fight scenes, he's constantly talking about how like he's as you said in the breakdown, constantly flashing back to his kind of turning in the way that the circumstance of Sagada being there at the wedding and the ritual, it does remind him of how he first turned, and it's almost like he reminisces of, imagine if none of this had happened, right? Imagine if
Mm.
none of it had been built up, and yet all of it did happen, and it has to happen. He has to continue to live. He's an immortal vampire. He's got to keep dealing with the consequences of his failings, and they're all just here, presented right in front of him. I don't know what else they could have done unless they'd shipped over the beheaded statue of Avacyn, and
Mm.
had that as the centerpiece in the hall. Like it's so humanizing to see him be, not just not be. It's almost like to get his side of the story right without actually having him have to explain himself to anybody.
Yeah.
And as much as I do find it's a bit cliche to have these millennial vampires just absentmindedly just throwing massive haymakers at each other to no real effect, it does feel like the weight of Soren's life is on his shoulders, and it's a very long life, so it's a
Yeah,
lot of
like
weight.
Olivia really twists the knife at every opportunity. Like it's not
Mm.
just the fact that she stuck him in a wall, she took his sword, she took his name as the Lord of Innistrad, which was a mocking name that like people gave Soren anyway. And there for her to take it as her own unashamedly is like its own fuck you to Soren. She then, invites him to this wedding, brings up all his family to sneer at him, and then there's a line where uh all of the sort of clergy, quote unquote, that's performing the wedding are all dressed in Abyssinian robes.
That's it,
Avacyn, the
yeah.
angel
Come
that he
on.
created, the religion that he let form around it to protect the humans, and the vampires now using that imagery in a kind of mock church wedding. It is all there for Olivia to sneer at Soren, and it's not like anyone else doesn't know it. Everyone is well aware that Olivia's just going, fuck you, Soren, like at every single point. And the only person, as you say, that Soren really cares about, which is Edgar, which in itself is a wonderful, like, sort of opening up into Soren's kind of, grounding to his world. Edgar doesn't give a shit. He doesn't give a
Doesn't
shit.
give a fuck, no.
Yeah, so it is full on, and yeah. I really empathized with Soren in this, and there's a really good sort of it's not like it's groundbreaking or anything, and I don't think it's like we need to be like, oh, what an amazing, like, innovative piece of writing, but it's a really well chosen piece of writing from Rivera, which is to have Soren have almost no spoken dialogue. Like, he does a bit, but almost all of the episodes where we focus on him, and that's like 3 out of the 5, every section where we're following Soren, it's his own mind sort of like dreamlike spiraling through, like especially like episode 1, for example, Ties and Invocations. There's like he doesn't speak for 98% of that text which he features in, and it's all just his own internal monologue, which just allows us to kind of really sink into what he's thinking and feeling, and just it's almost like dreamlike, which is really nice because it's not, you know, barbs and jabs and him being like, oh fuck off, I'm a horrible vampire. Like it's just his natural thoughts kind of milling around. And there's a line, it says, save us, they seem to say, referring to the humans of Innistrad. I'm trying, he wants to say.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Wants to say. Doesn't say it. Can't say it. He wants to say it. But it's and this is, I guess, the whole point, right? Is that most of the time we get an alternative perspective and all we see is Soren just being like, why is he so moody all the time? Why couldn't he chill out? Why doesn't he crack a joke and have a beer? It's like, well, this is why. He's got all this inner turmoil going on all the time. Like the constant struggle to try and keep balance on Innistrad when everyone else is just trying to fuck it up must be so exhausting. Especially like, because what's funny is the big wedding. Obviously, the wedding was a ruse to kind of just bring everyone together to have the whole. I mean, I don't even think it's that much of a ruse. I think Olivia's just so fucking proud of herself and so indulgent that she couldn't help but try and. Had it not been for twisting the knife, for example, I reckon that, you know, the ritual might have come somewhat to fruition. I also like the fact that it's not Deus Machina, because Catilda's spirit would have always come out of the Moon Silver Key at the point of when they tried to use it. It's almost like it wasn't like but you know, they arrived just in time. It's like no, it was already failed, right?
Olivia says to Catilda, "Oh, who invited you?" And Catilda replies, "You did.
You did, yeah." Idiot. It's literally set it up, you twat. It's like, well done. And this is the thing: as much as the threat. It's funny because the threat that Olivia and the whole wedding kind of provided, right, to Innistrad, and like not even to Soren, because I think that's the whole point. Is it was 2 parts, right? Is the major threat to the plane, which is this the Veldarins combining with the Markovs and then them taking almost like control over all of the angels, which however many of them are left, I don't even really know. I think it even says like there's at one point like there can't be that many angels left really. But anyway, to be able to take those over would be the end of humanity on Innistrad for sure, because your guardians, your protectors are now going to turn against you. And what like the ends to that, I don't think Olivia really thinks about it that far. I think it's that she got so carried away with mocking Soren that the kind of like the actual ritual kind of took a back seat. But yeah, I feel like his journey, whether he comes out of this at the other end feeling like he's still got, you know, things to fight for, or how he shares the responsibility with Arlen, because they are both still very present in the story. I'm very surprised. I thought this was coming from a long way off. I thought that Soren was going to die.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm surprised. I'm not saying, you know, you have to have deaths and things to have any kind of story have gravity, you know, like Dak and Domri don't exactly count, but there wasn't any permanent death, really. There wasn't anyone dying in this. I'm surprised that someone did. I'm surprised that Edgar didn't get staked, or Olivia didn't get her head torn off by Tovalar, or that Soren got reversely Percy'd. You know, I'm surprised that somebody didn't die. You know, they even baited us, right? They jib baited us at the end of episode 4 with Arlen getting staked by Arlen's hand, by Olivia's hands. Because I even think it says like a vampire's hand, when, you know, like with enough strength behind it, is as good as any other wooden stake. And again, nothing really came for it. She was kind of just okay again afterwards.
Yeah, Tovalar also gets away.
Everyone gets away. They literally, there's a joke on Reddit about how Edgar and Olivia almost like Team Rocket. They almost blast off again out the window, right? Yeah. And it's like, as much as I know they want to keep the idea of we can set up for later, you've already just set up Henry Rocket. Like you could have that as your next big bad, or focus on Runo, or focus on anything else. The fact that we've still left Olivia kind of open, I feel like she deserved to get a comeuppance for all her twattishness, for all her, you know, exposition and splendor and all that bullshit. I feel like she deserves to get bitch slapped, and I don't think she got her comeuppance very much. All she seemed to do was float off out of the reach of people, get abashed at people fighting back, and then piss off. That was kind of all she did.
I think it's interesting, right? It's an interesting... I felt like this was a larger characterization for Olivia, actually, in general, where she was set up to... Several times throughout the various stories, various characters comment on the fact that Olivia is just completely power mad and power crazed, and that's just her nature. Where there's other vampires, like it's even mentioned, like the other houses are not interested in certain things. Like Runo's only interested in his like sea god, and the Falconwraths don't really have any sort of like interest in power. And indeed, they don't actually. I mean, Anya Falconwrath isn't the head of the Falconwrath house. She's just their acting spokesperson, like their acting representative. They don't actually have like a massive leader. So I kind of feel like maybe the characterization of Olivia is that she is that kind of classic villain of going, she wants all the power and she has all these plans and she's very smart and witty, but as soon as the going gets tough, then she is out of dodge. The only thing I would say maybe it's a slight retcon of her character from Shadows over Innistrad Eldritch Moon. Obviously not the same writer, maybe not even the same creative team. Actually, I haven't looked that up. Where we saw Olivia donning armor and grabbing a sword and going out to meet the Eldrazi horrors.
Mobilized for war.
Yeah, exactly.
Like literally
so maybe,
the name of the card.
Yeah. Maybe that's just my impression of it. Or maybe, you know, like we also get an insight into vampires, and especially Edgar, of having this idea of like a larger plan, right? Of seeing the bigger picture, whereas werewolves can only see what's in front of their nose because that's their instinct. Vampires can see stretched out far in front of them. So maybe this is the right thing for Olivia to do. She has lost. She did her big swing. It didn't work out. She's like, well, I don't need the Moon Silver Key for anything else if I can't do the angel thing. Fuck it, you can have it, whatever. And then she gets the fuck out of dodge. So maybe this is Olivia being actually incredibly smart and like being a master tactician. She's already lost. There's no point fighting anymore. Let's go.
True. I guess you want to covet your immortality more than anything else. Well, I mean, I guess like some people like Sorin probably consider it to be somewhat of a quote unquote curse, right? I mean, it kind of bespokes a certain amount of duty upon you. You kind of have to like that's the thing is vampires should have a massive amount of responsibility compared to say werewolves. One, their society is far more civilized and structured and has much more longevity. So the fact they don't cultivate and understand like the long-term plan. This is why I think kind of Edgar kind of fell a bit short and Olivia a little, is that we didn't get any of their inner machinations. We got a tiny sliver of Olivia in the Midnight Hunt stories, kind of, you know, basking like sitting in that bath of blood, right, with the young maiden's face on her, like, and you got a little bit of insight into kind of her like her plan, right, and the fact that she's a bit coy, she's got some kind of plan, you know, she's clever, but we don't see any of that really here, and I think that's fine. I think it's funny that you said about we see her on the front line mobilized for war, whereas in this set is literally Crimson Bride, you know, like it's a very different role that she's playing, and maybe her characterization fits. Maybe that's the whole thing, is she was smart enough to realize during the travails and everything that she had to kind of step up, right? She kind of had to represent her and see her to. It was an external threat, whereas here she's the threat, so she can indulge and she can kind of sit back and find it, right?
That's
maybe the difference. So maybe like when she's got something that threatens her, then she gets a bit more like. I mean, at no point did she ever feel like. At so many points, I was like, "How are you not more worried about everything that's going on around you?" And at every point, I'm like, "How do they still need more than the angels and the geists and the werewolf?" You know, like that was the only thing I found that was kind of slightly confusing. The power dynamic kind of constantly seemed to be that the vampires just having more and more and more against them, and yet at no point did it seem to be enough. Like it was very interesting.
I do enjoy though the fact that every single race. We didn't see any zombies. That's like the only one we didn't see. But every single other major race. Have we not seen enough
of those?
Well, true. But every other single major race of Innistrad fucking hates vampires. They all hate vampires. The only ones who are fighting with the vampires were the demons, and that's only because of House Domnathi like literally pledging themselves to them. So, yeah.
Well, I guess there was a statement, right, of all of everyone that's ever died in the halls of Eldarin that naturally twist and turn and you deliberately break your mind, that all of the people that died there, their guides are vengeful as well. And that's where Kai goes, I'm just going to go off and rouse all those angry spirits that are sat in the halls, and we'll bring them to the fight as well. So I think it worked quite nicely as a culmination. I mean, I'd love to see this kind of, you know how like we've had recently like the Marvel What Ifs, right? I'd love to see like an animated kind of like little short of this particular fight and battle, because I feel like holy nonsense. Like when Sigarda's entrance, both getting dropped down out of the ceiling, you know, all chained up and bound and everything, and then also her kind of like when Catilda releases her, and holy nonsense, does she bring the fury, right? I mean, as much as I'm really annoyed we don't see. There should really be a story. One of the short stories should really be the time between Sorin's battle with her the conversation they have, and then whatever leads up to Olivia being able to have captured her and bound her and brought her to because a lot of things just get yada yada, right? It's like, oh, Edgar's here now, and all the rest of the Markovs are here, and oh, Sagada's here as well, and everyone's here. She had all this time to plan this wedding and everything. Even like I get it. Cool, you can't explain everything all the time. Would have liked a little bit of backstory to kind of how Sagada got there, but I do think that when it starts talking about that wave of energy, right, that bright light, and like the Sagada's righteous, I think it's even I wish I had the quote now. Soren even mentions about how had he given Avacyn even half as much of like the humanity of Sagada's like fury, then it would have been a very different, like Avacyn would have been a very different creation, and he almost like deliberately made her without that flaw, but that kind of that anger, that almost like human quality of indignance that Sagada kind of shows as she fires at it's the shattering of the glass that then fires glass into all of the vampires, shredding all of them, and the only reason Soren gets away is he jumps into a fountain of blood. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Sagada's great. Sagada's awesome. I love
Sagada is very cool. I mean, I do sort of like, it does remind me that the other Angel sisters aren't there. But it's just, again, this is the same thing that happens with everything. Even with giving them 10 episodes to write across 2 different sets, how can you possibly fit everything into these stories? I mean, if you think about, especially about the amount of legendary creature cards that are now in each set, and you want to see them pop up in the stories, even with the side stories, which they themselves do a great job of like fleshing out the legendary creatures. I mean, the side stories for this one, for example, you've got Jacob Hauken, you've got the Thalia Odric one, you have Torrens, and then you had Lord Streffen, who's one of the commander like decks. Like, they still have those legendary creatures being fleshed out. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like we're going to get this with every single set we ever have stories for, where we go, well, why didn't we see this and why didn't we see this? It's like, because then you're asking for a novella, and apparently people didn't like those, because even then,
apparently they're not very good, right?
Even then, like, things get missed, or like details changed or whatever else, and there's their own issues there. So like, what can you do? You're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Another stroke of having too many legendary creatures, but if you don't keep bringing back the old ones, people get annoyed not seeing them. But if you keep just the old ones, then it kind of feels like this. You're again, as you said, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. There's no real way around it. Plus, these stories are long. Like these, a lot of them, I was getting like halfway through, and I was like, oh, it's probably about wrapping up now. And I realized I'm only halfway down, like,
they're big.
The scroll bar. I'm like, oh, okay, right, cool. I mean, at least there's breadth, and so room to breathe and breadth within the stories. Like, they don't just, it's not a little flash. Like, I kind of feel like they give as much as they can. Do I feel like at the end the Phyrexian thing was kind of thrown in a little unnecessarily?
Yes,
maybe, yeah. Like,
but then they've got to hit these story beats. I'm sure that they would never even fussed about talking about Phyrexians, and then so an editor went, oh, by the way, we sort of need to set up 2023's magic cycle. Can we do the Phyrexian thing? Oh, fine.
Like, I'm sure the MacGuffin's interesting enough as it is, but it's kind of also funny that at the end of all of this, not only was it the MacGuffin to fix the day-night cycle, not only was it the thing that fucked up the day-night cycle, not only was it the thing that was going to allow them to do the Sagada kind of ritual to take control of them, not only was it the thing that held Catilda's spirit, but not only all of that, it's also going to stop the Phyrexians. But didn't you also get the Silex at the end of the Dominaria story that hasn't been touched on since Khan got that? So,
well, I mean, again, I think
it better fucking pay off. It better pay off well. That's all I'm saying. Is it better fucking pay off well, not just feel like, oh, Phyrexians, yeah.
Well, I actually sort of feel like, because the side story with Tangle with Ren and Seven, and then Teferi, they set up in that. I know it's a different author, but obviously someone's got to be keeping track of this, surely. They set up with that maybe Ren can help Teferi get Zalfir back. So maybe anything that's to do with Teferi is about perfecting his temporal magic and his phasing to help with the Phyrexians. So maybe the Moonsilver Key is going to help him there, and maybe anything with Khan is going to be about, Phyrexian go boom boom.
Taking the fight to new Phyrexia, yeah. So I guess it's funny just with how organic it felt like it came out of the Ren and Seven article to kind of build at least some of the characters. Ren and Seven obviously not being in any of the main stories at all. We're not entirely sure when that takes place, blah, 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 blah. The fact that all of that was kind of like dropped quite organically, and it just felt very strange at the end to be like, and also don't forget about this threat that technically, even though we know the next like 6 sets isn't really invested. I mean, we don't know how much we know the Brothers War is obviously a little bit going to touch on some of it, and we know that Dominaria United is definitely going to have to touch on some of it. This has got to be a reason to unite, right?
It has
right?
to. Yeah.
And if it just means that bringing back Zalfir kind of like like hour 10 just before the invasion kind of, because there's no way the Phyrexians don't have that memory in the oil of the Dominaria is the place they kind of want to go back to, because it's one center-ish of the multiverse. I know it's not quite anymore, but also a place that's defeated them, also a very, very large plane. If once they take that over, it's a great base for the rest of their package. How we talk about Phyrexians, this is the thing. Why drop it in at the end of a story when I would rather talk about the individual story. And as I said, set-wise, didn't enjoy the focus, as it were. Story-wise, I loved the focus of the fact it was just this wedding that got crashed and this big battle at the end, and then you drop fucking Phyrexians in it again. And it's all just service. It's all just fan service.
But then, like, again, they have to hit certain story beats, right? They definitely have things which the editors were like, we need this in the story. Don't care how you do it. Doesn't have to be a big thing, but someone at some point needs to go, ooh, Phyrexians, and then let's move on. We need to have Sorin, talking to Edgar. We need to have this, that, and the other. We need to not have Edgar and Olivia killed because we might bring them back because they're popular commanders, did I say commanders? I meant characters.
Wow.
Whoops. Definitely not thinking about what's on the cardboard. And they aren't thinking about what's on the cardboard. That's a nice little segue I just made for myself. We had some quite hilarious disparity between card art and stories. And I know this isn't this isn't a huge revelation. This is something that, especially with those novellas, was really poignant. Like, hello, the Ozolith from Ikoria. What fucking colour are you? Who knows? Could it have been an email? It could have been an email. No one told Django Wexler that it was meant to be blue, but he made it orange, and then no one just went, can you change that one word in your text? Yeah, I can just do that. I can just use a macro. Nah, it's fine. We won't bother. But they also, the thing I found funniest about this is, yes, okay, look, we all know the card art and then what's written in the story, and then, continuity editors, not only are they not going to catch everything, sometimes it's probably not even worth them trying to catch certain things. But there was just one which I was really just thought, oh, well, fuck you guys. There's a line in the first story episode, which is about how Sorin goes to find that Edgar's coffin is not there. And on the story article page, the actual page where you're reading the story, they have the card art where it shows Sorin looking at a coffin that is empty.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's like, and the funny thing is, that was from the other set as well. It's like, why would you get it from a set early? Like, for fuck's sake. I know exactly what you mean. It's like, so I'm literally looking at the picture for Sagada Summons, and Nesta, Asand, and Lil we need to talk about at some point in the future because they're very new to the game, but they've got a lot of very good artworks. Ain't no other fucking angels talked about. Come in. And there's 4 of them busting through the way. That didn't happen. Yeah. When did that happen? And then, Chandra, dressed to kill. She didn't arrive to the party in the dress. She was outside for most of the fucking story. That's like a big story beat. She only arrived afterwards. What do you mean? Added fuel to your fire of how bad that card, is in terms of, again, isolation in terms of story, design. It's probably very complicated.
The Ekaterina Burmack artwork is amazing. The name is hot garbage. Narratively, it's a shit card.
You know what I mean? Like, it's so many little things that doesn't necessarily kind of sync up, and we're asking a lot, right? I mean, we're asking not only for the cards and for between design and function and flavor kind of working as an individual card piece, but also to fit within this narrative story that we don't have to have. They give it to us for free. Are we still complaining about it? Of course we are.
Hey, look, they keep raising the price of bundles, okay? They get some £1 or £2 extra every year.
Yeah, you better keep giving us at least some amount of story. But
talk to me about the fact that you don't do you don't do retail store prices. It's like you're selling to them at a cost. If you keep raising those prices, I want my stories to be more fucking coherent. You understand?
Exactly. Right. If you're gonna, I really want an Unfinity story. I don't think we're gonna get one, but I would love a little short. That'd be amazing. I would say. So we talk about representation. I really want a quick aside. How do we feel about Edgar? Because a long time coming. I genuinely kind of didn't even notice. I
Oh, I
think I might
see.
have said this a couple
Just him
episodes
as a
ago.
character in general.
Yeah, how he's been represented in the story. Because I genuinely, even with only up until recently, realized he was still alive. In my mind, he was dead. And then I had to kind of relook. I was like, wait, is he still alive? And I looked it up. And it's like, oh, he's just asleep. And then, oh, okay, that makes sense. This is what obviously way before we knew it was Edgar and Olivia getting married. I
Yeah.
kind of had to do a bit of backstory check and find out. And for being this super expensive, intimidating commander, and having maybe a slightly, I mean, I quite like his card within the set. I'll just say full disclaimer, but as a character within the story, apart from being this person to bounce Soren's reaction off, which I think was perfect, I don't think I like him as a character, and I feel like maybe that's the benefit of him not dying, is they get a chance to do him justice again. But for me, it was a bit of a letdown. He was as much of an old decrepit fool as I think we kind of feared he was going to be. Maybe there was payoff that was lacking. I don't know. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, you've said this a few times in this episode, and actually, every time you say it, I've been meaning to talk to you about it. It's not the Edgar that I expected us to get, for sure. I do understand what you mean. I thought it was a little bit odd how he was just so quick to be in Olivia's kind of entrancement and almost willing to be so. I did think that maybe we were going to get a point where he kind of snapped out of it and was like, oh, actually, what the fuck's going on? Like, oh no, Olivia tricked me, la 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 la. But no, he is very much on the side of the vampires, which does seem to suggest different to especially a lot of the key art that we got for the set, where we saw there's I can't remember the artist. It was picked up upon where there's a key art scene where it's Olivia in the middle, all the guests around, and you do see Edgar Markov just kind of sunken in the back. I think we've spoken about it before, and he looks really pissed off. And I think a lot of the key art and the marketing, especially for the story, which does do a lot of narrative work, they are quite good at doing it, did sort of suggest that Edgar was going to be playing second fiddle and not happy about it compared to Olivia. But he seems perfectly fine with it here. But my rebuttal to that is that maybe that is what we're being told, is that Soren's built up this idea of Edgar in his head, and then when Edgar actually kind of, comes to the crunch point, is just a dick. But I sort of feel like there's maybe more to Edgar than even Soren's being let upon. Because we're always told, like, throughout the story, that Edgar's always looking ahead and Soren needs to be more about the bigger picture, and he learns lessons from him. And Edgar's counsel, there's even a line that says Edgar's counsel is never wrong. Whenever him and Soren have their little arguments or whatever, even if Soren implements Edgar's advice to his own ends, so he does do like what he wants to do to try and save Innistrad, Edgar's counsel is always helpful in doing so, even if it has to be interpreted in slightly different ways. There's a line just before Soren lets Edgar go, where Edgar says something to the effect of, Soren, you don't understand. It's about, and then Soren cuts him off and goes, yeah, big picture, power, this, that, and the other, whatever, fuck off. And I sort of think that, whereas Olivia was very much cut and run, like, yep, cool, I'm done, you beat me, fuck off, bye. Edgar was still at the point of where he was assumed that he was going to get killed by his grandson, still being like, no, look, dude, you really need to chill out. Like, there's actually something that we're trying to achieve here. Because Edgar's not, or at least was never presented to Soren as being a fool. He is the blood master, like, alchemist that created the vampires. He still is that guy. So I wonder, maybe you are right. I definitely read it in a different way that maybe hasn't been explored fully, and that's why they let him live, because perhaps Edgar had his own machinations going on, because he got led very easily, a bit too easily, I think.
That's the thing. And even his flavor text says, our kind has taken my gift for granted. It is time to correct that folly.
Yeah,
what correction?
I think there's something going on. This is me giving the larger scope of the story maybe benefit of the doubt that maybe isn't deserved.
Oh, you being the Edgar to my Soren? Is that what you're saying? I've got to look at the big picture.
Yeah, mate, you got to look at the big picture. You fucking pasty moody twat.
Wow, yeah, that hit pretty hard.
Actually, our Edgar Soren dynamic is actually both physically and metaphorically quite apt.
Oh no, that's great. We need to do
cosplay.
We need to change that. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Fantastic, beautiful.
Can I be sexy?
Yeah.
Can I be sexy Edgar from the Judge promo art? Though?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Right, okay.
How could you be anything other?
Oh, thanks, buddy. You can be Soren the Mirthless as opposed to Soren Solemn Visitor or something like that. How about that?
Yeah, no, I've got to go for Alucard, right?
Yeah, go for Alucard. Cool. So I understand what you're saying about
hope
Edgar.
So.
Yeah.
It's just, I guess it's a worrisome thing that we don't know when we're next likely to go back to Innistrad, and if we do go back, is it something they feel like they then want to wait that whole set around, considering that it was kind of weighted in this set specifically. I don't know. Again, it feels like maybe a beat that was lost or maybe not enough pronounced. And I guess, if that's the thing you wanted out of the set, there's always going to be something that you want or someone that wants something that doesn't get what they want. So fine, cool, whatever. It's not a big deal. It was just a strange kind of like a half. It didn't feel like it fully got there, but at the same time, Soren did above and beyond in character development and representation, so it kind of more than makes up for it, I think.
Yeah, and I think also what we have to understand is that it didn't get there for those characters because they aren't the focus, right? Actually, if we are following Soren, Arlen, and Teferi, and Chandra and Kai are there as well. We haven't even spoken that much about Kai. She's fine. She's doing her thing.
We shilled enough about her last episode. It's fine.
Yeah. And like they gave her Kaldheim. It's fine. We are following them. So the other characters, unless we want to do more jumping around and more story episodes and, have fucking endless and let's just do like weekly episodes and fucking we're not going to get the backstory fully of the antagonists, really. So I think, yes, as far as the characters who we are following and their experiences go, we did get there. And stories were resolved. And Innistrad is now back to relative normal, whatever normal means for Innistrad. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Midnight Hunt, I came out being like, cool, good, really like Rivera for Magic. Very, very cool. Massive Magic fan, good author. Not the most bombastic of story threads, but did it need to be? No. Whereas coming out of Crimson Vow, I'm like, oh no, cool. Yes, absolutely. It all makes sense. It's all laid out. Rivera was the Edgar. They had the big picture. And I think they fully smashed it out of the park.
I even like the fact that I think Arlen got just about enough like reinforcement of her character, and they had like a nice little kind of conversation with Catilda at the end as they were kind of walking back to the Celestis to kind of give us that almost like book ending, right? Because we started with Arlen talking with a random old lady right at the beginning of the first story from Midnight Hunt, then goes to find Catilda and they have a lovely interaction, and then we always get like the finish after that. It's just like with all the distraction of the massacre and the wedding, it's like, can we just stop bullshit and let's go back to like the talking about what we were supposed to be talking about kind of thing. I think it was really good, and it's kind of good for Arlen, who is already an older, wiser kind of character, surrounded by, apart from Teferi, young upstarts, as it were. I guess also, sorry, there's quite a lot of old people in Innistrad now I think about it, but Catilda, to have that was like motherly role to the mother role was quite nice as well. I think it kind of gave a nice finishing and rounding off to Arlen's kind of journey in these last two sets as well.
Yeah.
Really, really happy with it.
Yeah, Innistrad's not that bad. Most people live to about 70. Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
It's funny because half the fucking cast seem to live to like millennia years old. It's like, that's nothing to worry about. I know you were talking about whilst children are dying in the fields.
I mean, it's all relative. They probably don't live very well.
It's fine. But don't worry about the Eldrazi still in the moon. Everything's still fine.
Sure. One last little thing to touch on, because I think we got to wrap up soon. But one thing that I often find with the stories and like how the stories relate to the cards directly is actually my hope and wish isn't necessarily for more continuity between them in terms of like the story beats. My wish is for things like when they describe the characters, for the characters to look maybe a little bit more like how they're represented in the story and kind of like do it that way around. Because obviously with characters like Arlen, Rivera would have known about Arlen and visually had an idea of them, and obviously they have like design bibles and all this kind of thing which they can send off to artists, and I'm sure authors have access to them too. But obviously when artists get their own like little spin on it, I kind of wish that then Wizards would like almost hold off, get like the first draft and be like, cool, commission that artwork, go, do it now, which is why like things like Chandra dressed to kill maybe doesn't feel quite as good because we don't really get a description of what Chandra's wearing in the story. Do you know what I mean? But we do get a description of what Arlen is wearing in the story when they rock up to the Voldoran wedding. So this is through the eyes of Chandra. Chandra describes Arlen as being handsome, which I think is a perfect description, not only as like Chandra's like view of Arlen, being an older woman who is attractive, but also just a depiction of Arlen like in kind of who they are, which very well chosen word. Arlen is wearing a well-tailored oxblood jerkin, sprigs of birch embroidered at the collar, her red slashed sleeves ending in fresh pressed white cuffs, a fur mantle worn over one shoulder adds a woodsy touch. Where's that fucking artwork? Where's that artwork? I want that on a card.
You just need a poster, right? You just need a poster of Arlen just to put up in your room. That's what
I do like Arlen card.
I have to commission this shit because you got 3 different artworks from her fucking treatments in Midnight Hunt, and yet still you need more from your puppy dad, of your puppy mama. I get it. I understand. I mean, I feel like I would have liked to have seen like almost like a group shot. Like, we don't get any group shots really of any of them. I
Sure, yeah.
guess it would have been quite nice to see them all like, what is it like, out with the lads, out with the boys, and you do that kind of like a picture just before you get to the club. Like,
oh,
I'd
I
have loved
see.
to have
I thought
seen that.
in my head, I'm thinking there's a scene in Blade 2. This is a fucking reference. I just love this scene. There's a scene in Blade 2 where Blade is with, I think they're even called the Blood Pack, is walking up with the vampires up to the vampire club, and there's that Mos Def track in the background. Eye against eye. And it's like that beat in the background, and they're all slow-mo walking up to the club, and they're all like flexing all their leather armor and shit. I wanted that with all of them in their like their kind of planeswalker finery. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're kind of, I don't know if this will translate to America, but in the UK we have pantomime, right? And at the end of the pantomimes, there's always like the curtain call versions of the actors' clothes. So like if they're wearing like a jacket like all the way throughout the play, at the end of the play it's that same jacket but it's white with rhinestones on it. That's how I imagine a lot of their like fancy gear is, like Teferi, just in Teferi shit, but it's got like, gold tassels on it or something. It's slightly more well tailored. Yeah, that's what I imagine anyway.
Do they all just go back to Ravnica to change before coming back again? It's these kinds of things I need to ask questions about. I'm like, where did they get all of these outfits? Where did Arlen have it sitting around?
I think it's a bit of a throwaway line where Arlen is dressed how like a werewolf would be dressed if they were to go to like a werewolf function, and they're not in wolf form. Which when does that happen?
A werewolf function.
For fuck's sake. But I think all the others are like half-assedly trying to pass themselves off as other vampires. I think that's what they're trying to do. I don't think it's settled on very long in the story. I could even be wrong, but in my head, that's what I thought they were trying to do. Because quite frankly, and quite rightly, it wasn't focused on much. They tried to get through the front gate. They didn't do it. And then Sorin fucks off inside. Fine, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they yada-yada'd all the bits that need to be yada-yada'd, and they focused enough on the things that need to be focused on.
Yeah.
Kind of gave for a succinct story with some little fluffy bits that you can kind of dig your teeth into if you want to as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very good all round, very good. I'd love to see him come back and do something that's less contained, something more sprawling. I'd have loved to have seen Rivera do Battle for Zendikar stories,
Sure.
and so it maybe felt slightly less generic. But again, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. And we should just be happy with what we've got, which I am. I am very happy.
Awesome, so am I. Well, yeah, all right, listeners, if you are also happy with the Crimson Vow storyline, or if you are unhappy, is there anything that you would want to talk about? Is there anything that you think worked and think didn't work? Is there anything you would want to see in future stories? How is Innistrad nowadays? Would you want to go back there, or is it kind of done now for good? Let us know on our Twitter at mtflavouring. Emails go to mtflavouring@gmail.com. My personal Twitter is at AndyManface. Nathan's, yours is?
At the Fox in the Moon.
And yeah, I think that's all that can be said. I'm now I don't miss having a little bit of a break between sets, even if they are one block. It's been a lot doing Midnight Hunt's Crimson Vow. Yeah, we will have to think of episodes. Maybe we are done with Crimson Vow. Maybe we don't need to talk about it that much anymore. Maybe we can talk about more generic stuff in future episodes. We'll have to see.
Yeah, there's also a lot of stuff on the horizon. There's another big yawn, super drop. Good God. It feels like there's one every other fucking day. And I guess we've started to get on Affinity leaks and spoilers. We've started to see some lands.
Oh, yeah, you're a big Unset fan, aren't you?
Oh, buddy. Dude, space. But yeah. I guess we'll see. Because we did a Book Club episode recently. I mean, we'll have to fit what we can around the schedule because hospitality and Christmas. Oh, buddy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yeah, I think there's still plenty of like little bits and pieces. I think Innistrad. I think we might be done with Innistrad. It was it felt like months of Innistrad, which is fine.
The last little thing I'd like to say is that this time of year, Spotify does their wrap up of like the year's listening, where people get like their breakdowns. To be honest, I don't 100% know what it is, but it's basically like a year in view for Spotify. And people have been posting up about what music they've been listening to across 21 and what podcasts they've been listening to. And honestly, we have been blown away. Really humbled, actually, about the amount of people showing us that we're in their top 5 of podcasts for Spotify. And we are in some of them, we're in some really good company as well. Thank you so much to everyone who this year and indeed the year previous that we've been doing this has basically given us their listening time. We know some of our episodes can go on for like almost 2 hours. I think, this one's going to be about an hour long. So as much as, we appreciate and we love it when you tell us that you're happy for us making the content, believe you me, we absolutely love the fact that you're listening. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Yeah, much appreciated.
Much appreciated. Much love. Much love
Yes.
to all of you. Thank you.
Right, well, all that remains for me to say is then, thank you again so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We'll see you soon.